let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
We haven't
This is so
we
awesome.
are an open culture that believes
actually
in
a big
importance of
piece
What is that process that a developer, or let's say a
As the
developer
Kubernetes
should-
ecosystem really boomed.
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hours live stream. I am co-host Andrew Sullivan, also known as Sully, and I am joined by my always amazing and very welcoming and knowledgeable co-host, Mr. Jonny Rickard. How are you, Jonny?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
It is a great day at Red Hat. That's what I got to say. Here
Awesome.
in the greater Raleigh area, it's warm out, but not stormy today, at least not at the moment. So, I can't complain.
Nice. Yeah. So Christian and I were just talking about this in the pre-show. Like, I live in San Antonio. It's usually hotter than Hades out here, 100% of the year. And we actually got a ton of rain over the last week. And so it's dropped the temperature down from 105 to 85. And it's been
Breaking out
nice.
the parka out there, huh?
Dude, it's been. I actually had to get my umbrella, which I don't know if I've ever used my umbrella in July, to be honest. So yeah, it's been very nice.
Yeah, we've been getting some storms, but it's been pretty hot and humid. So, but it's tolerable. It's not too bad. I don't know where there's a thing you can go to around the Raleigh area where it's like an old quarry that's filled with water, and now some company they own it, and it's a whole bunch of inflatables and stuff, so you can run around and slides and all kinds of other stuff. So I think we might go there.
That's cool.
To help cool off, so long as it's not storming. It's supposed to storm this weekend, so we'll see. Be lots of fun.
That sounds awesome.
All right. Well, thank you to the audience. Thank you folks for joining us today. So today's topic is multi-cluster observability. So this is something that is coming up more and more frequently as I talk with people, as I'm sure our two guests today talk with folks regularly, because we are seeing more and more customers who have, multiple clusters. This is something that, it was close to 100 episodes ago, I think in the 40s, when we had Tushar on, and we were talking to Tushar and asked him about what are we seeing with trends now? And Tushar said at the time, we're starting to see customers who are deploying more smaller clusters instead of fewer larger clusters. So the observability team, I know that they've been making a huge amount of improvements, changes, expansion of capabilities and stuff like that. I'm very happy here at episode 132 to finally start. I think we're 3 or 4 episodes deep now with the observability team, but to really be digging into these things. So I will ask Roger and then Christian to introduce yourselves from the observability team, and I know you also have subspecialties as well inside of there. So yeah, please, Roger.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Roger. I've been working as a PM in Red Hat for the last 2.5 years, and my focus areas are the in-cluster monitoring stack, so mainly Prometheus and Alert Manager, but also we're working on on the multi-cluster side, helping some of the operators in ACM, and also recently the PM for power monitoring with an upstream solution with Kepler. So,
oh yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's an interesting one, being able to see, real-time or near real-time power utilization. And I think it's interesting, I'm an old hardware guy, an old virtualization admin. So, the concept of being able to scale down your cluster to save power, is an interesting one.
Yeah.
But that's not why we're here today.
Next time.
Yeah. Christian, please.
Yeah. I'm Christian. I'm a product manager for Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management. I'm in this position for about 3 years. So I'm responsible for the application lifecycle management part of ACM. So working very closely with the GitOps team, a lot of customer questions in this area as well. I was a long time responsible also for the governance part of ACM. So how can I ensure that clusters are configured for best practices, how to detect any changes in the configuration of clusters, how to enforce the correct state of the cluster, how to integrate with admission controllers like Gatekeeper. So we have a lot of questions in this area as well. But now, since the beginning of the year, I'm responsible for ACM Observability. So I'm basically the interface to the OpenShift monitoring team. So basically my role is basically to ensure that everything what the OpenShift monitoring team is doing, or most of what the OpenShift monitoring team is doing, is also getting designed for multi-cluster management.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. And, Roger, I'm sure you can talk far more in depth and at length than I can about, the Prometheus architecture and Thanos and all the things that we've got going on in there. So I think in a couple of minutes after the top of mind stuff, it'll be a good refresher, because I don't think we've talked about Thanos and that stuff in a while. So I think it'll be interesting for folks to learn about that.
Yeah, I think the last time when we had Jamie Parker on is probably when we even kind of broached the subject of Thanos, right? It's like right when it was being released into the stack.
Yeah. With that, so this is an office hours live stream here on Red Hat Live Streaming, which means that we are here to answer your questions. So whether they're about today's topic or not, if there's anything that comes to mind that you'd like to ask about OpenShift or ACM, I'd say ACS, but I don't know. Please ask those questions, but I don't know if we'll be able to answer those directly, because it's probably the one that I'm least familiar with. Quay, ODF, so on and so forth. Feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer those. If we don't know the answers, which, let's be frank, happens more often than not, we are happy to go back and see what we can find. Reach out to the folks that we work with in the product teams. Roger and Christian are both from the product management team, as well as engineering, and sort of across Red Hat as we need. And if you're not watching us live, go ahead and reach out to us as well. So here on the screen, you can see both Jonny and I's email address, jonny@redhat.com, or Sully, SULLY, @redhat.com. We're happy to answer those questions as you send those in. You can also reach out to us on Slack. So both of us, maybe all four of us, I don't know, are on the Kubernetes Slack. So if you go to slack.kubernetes.io, you'll see the thing there to get an invite if you haven't already joined. And then when you search through the channels, there is an OpenShift users channel inside of the Kubernetes Slack team. So we are always happy to interact with, to answer questions, to help folks as much as we possibly can there. So don't hesitate to reach out. So top of mind topics, Jonny. There's a few things inside of our document here. This is the most we've had in a while, actually.
Yes, I actually did some research before I did I went on a little staycation, and so I actually did some stuff before I left, so that way I wouldn't be rushing to get it done last night.
Wait, what is free time? I don't understand this concept.
It's not really, it's just a mindset, it's not really a thing. Yeah, so we had a couple of products that went GA, some like updates to products that went GA. So Advanced Cluster Security went 4.5 went GA on July 24th. And this release enhances the vulnerability management, scanning, and compliance workflows. You can find more information. Sean Rickard was on the stream 2 weeks ago, and gave a bunch of information. And we also provided the link to the 60-day trial of the ACS cloud service. So if you wanted to go and kick the tires without having to install it in your network, you just want to, hey, let me check out the SaaS and see what it does. That link is in that description. And yeah, we need your feedback. So go let us know. Go try it. Let us know what you think, and we'll try and hook it up. And then another one is Red Hat Quay went to 3.12. That also went GA July 24th. And that release enhances the security, streamlining image life cycles. It aligns with the latest container industry standards. So there's a lot that went into that release. But that was the headline from the GA announcement. And then our buddy here, Sully, put together a demo on OpenShift virtualization or virtualization modernization. And that link is right here, maybe. So we'll copy and paste that over here in the chat, so that way you can check it out, maybe. And then to Andrew's point about asking questions and stuff like that, we got a question about how to become a proctor for training. So literally, if it's a question about something at Red Hat, we will try and find the answer for you. We spent a little bit of time. We actually found the right couple of people to ask, and hopefully gave a valid response back to the question. But yeah, we will do whatever we can to help make sure that we answer your questions. So almost any topic at Red Hat is not off limits, but we'll let you know if they are. And I don't know if you want to go over these last two, Andrew.
Yeah, I can. And that demo, it was fun to make because I've done a lot of demos over the last couple of years of OpenShift virtualization. And the exact way that we open that video is usually the way that I talk about the demo. Like, hey, it's 2024. Like, you shouldn't be surprised when virtualization does virtualization, like, even if it is
Yeah.
OpenShift virtualization. And so it's doing those demos, showing just virtualization basics. It literally is like, this should be boring. This should not be like exciting that you see a virtual machine do virtual machine things.
Yeah.
So I did have fun creating that one. Does AI security fall under cloud security, or is it a separate domain? If you're a pen tester or bug bounty hunter, can you transition into AI security, or do you need to study the entire domain to do so? That's a good question. I don't know. I would say that they overlap. Certainly
Yeah.
Red Hat's overall stance is that, hybrid cloud is a key component of an overall AI strategy. Your data is going to be spread all over the place. It's hard to find resources sometimes, right? NVIDIA GPUs are still challenging to acquire in some cases and prohibitively expensive in others. So I feel like there's definitely going to be a substantial amount of overlap there. But I don't know if we have any official stance. Jonny, Roger, Christian, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would think that I'd still think it's the cumulative, right? Because AI, right? You're just talking about a model. You still have to go after the stack, right? You still have to understand the stack, from the hardware up to what's presenting. But Numplex, if you want, shoot me an email or shoot us an email, and I'll forward this to our security team and ask them from their perspective, what do they think, and then get back to you, or at least I'll try and get an answer and then respond back to it next week in our stream.
Yeah, and we are live. So a couple of things that I had for the top of mind stuff. So kind of I don't know if it's the most interesting one of the two that I have, but an interesting one is that updates from 4.15 to 4.16, OpenShift 4.15, OpenShift 4.16 are already in the stable channel. So historically, we always say it's 45 to 60 days is the usual window for the stable channel to include upgrades between minor releases. This time it was closer to like 30 days, I think. I want to say June 27th was the GA date for 4.16, and it was I think Monday was when it got promoted. So faster cycle than usual. I feel like that's a good thing. Here we are, 15, 16 releases in. We're getting pretty good at this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, hopefully, no promises.
Allegedly.
So if you are using, or if you have upgraded to OpenShift 4.14 EUS or 4.15, you can use the EUS and or stable channels in order to do those upgrades. So remember, an EUS or an accelerated update with the EUS channel, you are pausing updates on the machine config pools for worker nodes. You do the control plane update from 4.14 to 15 to 16, and then you unpause those machine config pools for the compute nodes, and then they do a one-time 4.14 to 4.16 update. So it is a little more involved, but the documentation goes through all of that in depth if you are using the EUS channels. So let's see. Was there anything else? Nope, nothing else popped up in chat. So the last one that I had is OpenShift Lightspeed, which remember we had Eric Jacobs on to talk about a few weeks ago. Is now in dev preview. So I will share the link here in chat. So if you're interested in that, please browse to that site. From there, you will be able to see how to deploy or how to register and how to deploy and take a look at Lightspeed. So I know that team is operating at, no pun intended, Lightspeed in order to continue to expand and add capabilities and all that other stuff. So in particular, if you look at that page that I linked to, there is a section for providing feedback for a conversation. Super important at the dev preview stage. That team getting feedback on how it responds, on the type of responses, the quality of the responses is super, super important for these things. So please don't hesitate if you decide to try out Lightspeed as a developer preview to send us all of the feedback that you have. Can you upgrade control plane node from 4.14 to 16? yes, but not as a one step. It's a two step because of the API stuff that has to happen. So it'll go through. It is a sequential update for 14, 15, 16 for various reasons, but you can update to 4.16. All right, I think that was all I had, Jonny.
Awesome. That's it.
All right. So let's talk about multi-cluster observability. So this is something that I don't know if we want to start, Roger or Christian, with sort of the state of individual cluster observability and what that looks like. The Prometheus and why is the name of logging escaping me right now? Loki. Loki is the current logging solution that we suggest, although I think the Elasticsearch based one is still out there. And then we can talk about ACM and how it fits in, particularly with the metrics observability. And I think there was in chat before the stream started, somebody was asking about multi-cluster logging aggregation and what that looks like. So I will yield to you all and what your preference is.
Yeah, Roger, I believe regarding single cluster monitoring observability, it's better you start.
Yeah, we can start with single cluster. Yeah, you already know where the status now is that we use Prometheus for the in-cluster stack. We have it both for like the in-cluster and then the user workload monitoring. There is some work being done that we leveraged through when we did like the hosted control planes that actually veered off to a product we called Cluster Observability Operator that is in tech preview at the moment. And that is like what we do there is that we allow customers to spin up extra Prometheus instances where they are not so opinionated as the user workload monitoring. So you can have several stacks that won't conflict with a Prometheus stack. So that is something we will continue use going forward.
Yeah, and I want to point out a couple of things. So by default, with an OpenShift cluster, there is a Prometheus instance that's deployed. And it does things like scrape the node exporter endpoints and stuff like that across all of the nodes inside of a cluster. But it does not, while it collects metrics and it looks at what's happening with your pods and your PVCs and everything else that's inside of there, it has no awareness of what's happening inside the pods. So if you want to monitor your own application, Red Hat through the observability side, we have what we lovingly call user workload monitoring, which when you turn that on, I believe it deploys a second instance of Prometheus that is then configured. Basically, you, the administrator or the application developer, would define using CRDs endpoints for to scrape those metrics from. And then we aggregate those two metrics endpoints together inside of the cluster using Thanos.
Yeah, and the challenge here has always been like in the user workload monitoring side is that if you want, as an admin, want to configure some more advanced settings, you cannot do that because the CRDs will be overwritten by the cluster monitoring operator. So but then using this cluster observability operator, that's a new operator, we only lock down certain CRDs with server-side apply, and then the administrator can still change things to that Prometheus instance. So you get more control of the things that if you have certain settings for it.
Yeah. And so with this change, does that mean that I could deploy like my own Prometheus using just the Prometheus operator without using, user workload monitoring and have all of that hook in and aggregate?
They work in parallel, yes. And what happens in the future if we gonna like maybe let it replace user workload monitoring? We are not decided that yet, but it's like you can have multiple instances now, and it won't conflict with the user workload monitoring or the in-cluster stack.
Okay. And Dwayne, your question, COD, it's CRD, custom resource definition. So at the most primitive level, custom resource definitions are extensions of the Kubernetes API to provide new object types. And then we have an operator could be, it doesn't have to be an operator, but you have something behind that API that actually takes action. So if you think in context of, I'll pick on OpenShift virtualization again, because we were talking about it a moment ago. When you deploy OpenShift virtualization into your cluster, it adds the pods that are the controller, and then it adds custom resource definitions that are API extensions. So when I define a new virtual machine object, that controller looks and sees that the object was created and then does something with that. And that's going to be true for sort of all of the different operators and things that are deployed inside of OpenShift. So whether it's a cluster observability, when I go in and I define things like, do I want to turn on user workload monitoring? Well, you set the flag in the custom resource, and the operator, the controller, takes action to deploy and configure those resources. If I deploy the Postgres or the MySQL operators, when I create a new instance of Postgres, the operator, the controller, takes action to deploy the pods, create services, create routes, do whatever it's configured to do inside of there. So they all fit together quite nicely. And that also extends to other things as well. So for example, or I should say many of the CSI drivers also use custom resource definitions. So I'm thinking like the Dell Power Star things, NetApp Trident, they use CRDs in order to define configuration, et cetera. So was there another question, Jonny? I think there was.
I don't think so. I think we're...
Advantages to having ACM for a single cluster.
Yes.
Yeah. Christian, I don't know if you want to...
Maybe you can say that ACM already provides value for a single cluster, because here also you have everything in one single pane of glass, so all the different components of ACM, like application lifecycle management, governance. You can deploy applications to a single cluster. You can deploy policies to a single cluster. You can search in a single cluster. Certainly the value is here, but to be fair, customers have something like 5 or more clusters, and here you see a lot of the more value in ACM. So the bigger the fleet is, the more value you get with ACM. I mean, it's clear.
Got it. And Numplex, I think we'll follow up, because I don't know that we have answers to the rest of your questions, because you had the one that was one comment that was multiple questions. I don't know that we have answers to the rest of those. More challenging to transition from pen tester to cloud security, or the other way around, quantify the overlap, that type of stuff. But I don't think any of us are experts on that. So I think I already saw an email come through about that.
Yeah.
Did I see that, Jonny? Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll follow up an email on those.
So and at Numplex, I got a reply. I'm sorry, Sully. I got a reply back from Sean, so I'm just going to paste that really quick, and then he sent a link. But Numplex, if you have any follow-on questions to this, just let me know, and we'll loop Sean in, so that way you can get an answer. I've also got some. I'll put the question out to another friend of mine that's over in product security, so maybe hopefully we'll get a couple answers and stuff like that. But yeah, for right now, here's what we got. Sorry, Sully, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Okay, so single cluster observability. So metrics wise, we have Prometheus and Thanos. So I don't know that I have a good off the top of my head way of describing Thanos and sort of its role. Roger, I don't know if you have anything.
Mostly, like if we look at especially on the ACM level, it's there for like the long time storage also, and it's also allowing it to be the data to be highly available, and the scaling, of course, because Prometheus time series doesn't scale very well, and if you have millions of series. So, and also for the single cluster, the Thanos is there because the Prometheus is deployed in an HA solution. So the Thanos is there to decouple like the data, so you only get a single one when you're querying the data.
Got it. And so is it accurate to say that Thanos is an aggregator? Or an aggregator isn't right. It's more like a query engine against the Prometheus data source?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say it's, you could say it can aggregate it as well. I would say that's fine.
Okay.
So,
because I know it's been, I don't remember how long ago it was. I want to say back in the 70s or 80s, episodes in the 70s or 80s numbers was when we talked about Grafana, Jonny. And you remember when we showed deploying a Grafana instance in a cluster, we pointed it at the Thanos instance, not the Prometheus instance, for the reasons Roger is just describing. Of
Yeah, but it's
deploying
so much
Kubernetes.
more efficient in querying the data. So
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
maybe that's a good transition over to ACM, because when we have all those single clusters, we also need to get the data out somewhere if you have a multi-cluster. So normally we do that by remote write to some instance. But you could also then instead utilize like an ACM hub or something if you have multi-cluster. And I think good transition for Christian to talk a little about ACM maybe.
Yes. First of all, there is a question in the chat from Babuni. So, can we configure vector Loki using ACM as a logging stack? So maybe I answer this right now. So, as you know, in the past, ACM was not designed to handle logs. We had some nice examples with ACM policies, how to send logs away, maybe with policy templates to other destinations. So that you, for example, could say every managed cluster gets his own topic in Kafka, and I templatize this and I send it to the right topic. So this was always our position. But now, and this is something we can also show a little bit later in the slides, and I also put the link of the enhancement request, which is public, which is basically describing here our work. We are working together with the logging team in order to integrate this more in ACM. So the plan is to provide this as a dev preview in ACM 2.12, which is the next ACM version, so the fall version of ACM. So where we will provide some way to see the logs in ACM. And this is exactly what the team is working on. So we are, as you know, ACM has a way to ship features with add-ons. And we are working on a new add-on which will integrate logging, but certainly also other features. So this is what I mentioned at the beginning. So our task is in ACM to ensure that all what the monitoring team is doing, like tracing, like logging, but also analytics feature, that we get into ACM in an efficient way.
Yeah, and I'm saying like the goal there is like we have seen like from customers that they operate in so much diverse environments, and the needs start to switch. So like people want to select like the most relevant signals for them. So if that's going to be metrics or logs or maybe power monitoring in the future that you want to send, it's going to be easy with this new framework to extend that to like forward signals to ACM, and also like configure where you store that data to like a cluster storage somewhere else. So maybe.
Ah, cool.
If you like, we can share a little bit the slides and we can talk a little bit about ACM observability, about we can take a look into the environment. So if you are okay, I start sharing my screen. And once we talk about the architecture, maybe Roger, you like to get a little bit more into the details. So let me know if you can see the slides right now. Is it okay for you?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Yeah, so you see here that we talk here about ACM 2.11. This is the last version, as you know, shipped 2 weeks ago. And you see here some of our new features. I really don't want to talk about every feature, just maybe highlight a few of this. So we are providing now the enhanced OLM operator integration. This is really a feature where I can tell you, talking with customers, this is really good. They like deploying operators with operator policy, and it has really some very good enhancements regarding managing the life cycle of operators. So, for example, if you work with OpenShift virtualization, it's nice maybe to install this operator with this new policy type. Another thing, what is very important, we will not talk a lot, is the right sizing. So customers basically ask us about how can we better display if namespaces are configured correctly regarding the applications. So maybe you have seen our blog, what we have published some weeks ago, about our first dev preview of this right sizing, and I will show you also later a little bit our dashboard regarding right sizing, what is now available with ACM 2.11. And the other thing I really want to highlight at the beginning is this fine-grained RBAC. So many customers have asked us about this. So basically, the goal is that you can configure in a central way with cluster policies, that you can restrict both on the namespace and the cluster level what metrics you should be allowed to see. So let's assume you are an SRE and you log into the observability UI in ACM. You only see the clusters you are allowed to see and the namespaces you are allowed to see. So this is really something which was blocking some of our customers from rolling out ACM on a bigger level. So what you see here, and Andrew, you mentioned it, so you are working a lot with OpenShift virtualization. This is also our goal. So we want to provide value for integrating with OpenShift virtualization. And as you know, the different areas of ACM, like cluster lifecycle management, like GitOps integration, this is already there and it is used by the customers. But our focus is also a lot in this multi-cluster observability part. So you can say search as some related feature of ACM. I always say it's an underestimated feature. More and more customers are using it. And what you see here is that you can easily retrieve the virtual machines in the fleet of clusters. You can retrieve it. You can see also the status. And in the future, we maybe plan even that you can have some actions on the virtual machines that you can start, stop them, launch out into the console. This is something we are currently discussing. But what is already there in ACM 2.11 is our first dashboard regarding OpenShift virtualization, where you see basically the virtual machines in the Grafana view. You see, for example, if they are raising some alerts. And this is exactly what we are also working on at the moment. We are discussing, for example, right sizing enhancement regarding OpenShift virtualization. It's very, very important for us. So you can certainly also provide here some input. And we are working on new dashboards, for example, regarding capacity management of virtual machines in the same way as we have done for hosted control planes. So let's only quickly talk about the architecture. Maybe Roger, we can later talk a little bit more about this. Just quickly highlight some of the features what we have provided. So the first feature I want to highlight is the t-shirt sizing of the observability stack. So this is really very important. Even if customers have small clusters or small fleets of clusters, the observability stack can be really, really big. It depends really on the way the customer is working with monitoring, how much retention size, for example, they have. And here you see a new way to configure observability. So you just have a new property, the instance size, and then you just define one of the values. And this will basically do all the setup for you regarding the different components of observability. So currently just dev preview, but I feel we need to bring this to GA quite soon, that the customers are really using this with confidence.
I have to say that I really appreciate that as time goes on, we're getting better about being more opinionated on these things. Red Hat we're really good, and I adore our documentation for this. We expose all of the knobs and buttons and levers and wheels and everything else, but we don't always tell you why to, turn it this or set it to this level or do these things. And having these opinionated recommendations or opinionated configuration that is still customizable, I think is really important and really moves us a long way forward, and just making it more, accessible and more easily consumed. So I'm really happy to see these things happening, not just in ACM, but sort of across the board.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the next thing is, this was a very important goal for us for ACM 2.11, that we finally can deploy the observability stack also to Microshift instances. So you see where it's not working yet for etcd related metrics. We are working on this, but it's working now. So if you have some customer or some use case for integrating Microshift into ACM, then in the past it was only the observability add-on which was not deployed. And this is now fixed, as you see here. So it's a nice enhancement, and certainly it's also dev preview at the moment, but we will achieve technical preview soon in the next version. So if you have microshift instances, this is again the fine-grained RBAC, what I already mentioned at the beginning. And as I mentioned, it is really super important. And what you basically just have to do is you create here the cluster role on the hub cluster. So it's only a hub cluster setting, and you can think about acting as a filter. So you filter basically the managed clusters, which you see here as resources, and the resource names and as namespaces. So this is basically the setting of this new feature. And so we try to work with our customers to integrate this in their environments. And we are still in a phase where we are looking for feedback, but it's a technical preview feature. This means the customers can use it. They can open support cases. We are getting support for this. So do you think this is... Yep.
I'm going to interrupt you for a moment to talk about Jacob's comment here of folks comparing ACM with the ARIA suite from Broadcom, formerly VMware. Of like when we think of the ARIA suite, there's a number of different things. I think a lot of people think of like log aggregation and the metrics. So now I'm struggling to remember because I'm on the spot. Log Insight and operations are the two products inside of the ARIA suite that we tend to think of, and that we've even sort of been talking around similar functionality here. So what I want to point out is, within OpenShift and really the broader OpenShift platform plus set of capabilities, it's more, and Christian, please correct me if I'm wrong, those things are sort of a part of OpenShift platform itself, and then ACM really enhances it through the multi-cluster abilities, as well as providing a lot of summary-based information. So the way that I think of it is, if I go to an individual pod or even a virtual machine, I can look at and I can see fine-grained performance information about it, and I can see that out to a few days or maybe a week. I don't remember what the default retention policy is for Prometheus data. Maybe it's 30 days. But when I want to look at it for like long-term, less granular, trends and stuff like that, that's where ACM really comes into play. Where I can look at, I don't remember what it is, but it's at least a year, I think, for the metrics going back on pods and stuff like that to be able to get information on them and what their, capacity requirements are, stuff like that. So it's definitely one of those, like, you don't need ACM to do it, but ACM enhances things. And in particular, it provides the search function that you were highlighting a few slides ago, provides that, quick and easy way to find resources across all of the clusters. So again, I'll pick on virtualization. If I've got 10 clusters that are all running virtual machines, if they're all plugged into ACM, then I can go in and I can do one search and I can see all of those things from inside of there. And that's what you were hinting at with some of the additional controls that might be coming in the future of like, hey, being able to do some more element management, so VM level management things in the future. But it is not, and I want to be clear, it is not meant or intended or roadmapped to be anything like a management plane for those things.
I really like
and correct me if I'm wrong, Christian. I think also what ACM leverage here is like, if you don't have multiple like environments, some VMs, some are not VM, some are edge, you can still like have the cluster lifecycle management, the governance, the application lifecycle is quite good, like in the ACM world.
Yeah. So both the summary was very good in my opinion. Also, your comment, Roger, was absolutely right. I mean, for us, OpenShift virtualization is just another element what we can manage with ACM. And I also don't think we need to compare with VMware product. We just go step by step. I would like to say improving the value of ACM regarding OpenShift virtualization. We have already the basis, and now we are doing the enhancement requests. What I just explained, and certainly also more in the GitOps space, for example, better handling of the failover of virtual machines between different clusters. Here we have some plans to improve our UI. So we are going step by step, and I think that this is a good approach.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that while ACM, and from what I know of the roadmap, I'm clearly not an expert. Christian and Roger are the experts. while a lot of these things are focused on virtual machines, really that's just putting them in context inside of ACM. Remember that a virtual machine is just another, Kubernetes YAML object. So really all of these things apply to pods and any other workload that's running inside of your OpenShift clusters. It's just giving some more context around what that means and what that looks like inside of, for example, the ACM console. And Babuni, I'll pick on your question here for a moment of like, can you start and stop virtual machines using ACM? I don't think so. Today, there is not like a start stop button inside of the ACM console, but I believe that you can edit the YAML, and from there, you can set the VM to running true or running false. So you can power it on and power it off. It's just ACM doesn't have yet the context awareness of, oh, this is a virtual machine. And for a virtual machine administrator, it makes sense to give them a power on, power off button. Because historically, pods, we don't care about power on, power off, right? It's either scheduled or it's not. So things like that, I think, are one. It's important that we are adding awareness, context awareness around things like virtual machines. But two, it's also not limited just to virtual machines, right? ACM is a massively powerful tool that does a whole bunch of stuff beyond just virtual machines. I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah, perfect. So let me go a little bit further in the slides, and I have really not many left. So basically, what you know is about the multi-cluster observability architecture as it is right now. So you know that we are deploying an endpoint operator to the managed clusters, which is providing a metrics collector. It's collecting the metrics. Also, user workload monitoring is supported for quite some time. And at the hub cluster, we are basically aggregating. We already mentioned that we have Thanos instance communicating with S3 storage. We have the Grafana for the UI, and we have the alert manager component. And we are really getting a lot of questions from our customers regarding alert manager. So as you know, at the moment, alert manager needs to be configured on the command line in the secret. This is something where we would like to have some improvements in the UI. So basically, if we talk about the alert manager UI, which is coming in ACM 2.12 as a dev preview, we want to achieve 3 goals. We want to configure alert manager in the UI, also the destinations in the UI. We want to group alerts so that you can send incidents based on different alerts which are coming maybe together. And you would like to silence the alerts. This means, let's assume you are deploying virtual machines. We are very noisy regarding alerts. You want to silence them if you think that these alerts are not relevant. So especially in this area of alert manager, we have really very good plans. And basically the main goal, the vision is really that we are helping more the SRE and the cluster administrator who really gets a problem on the weekend. And we want to help him that he can troubleshoot this as easy as possible. So this is one of the goals what we have. And here you see basically our future ACM roadmap. And this is also answering the question of the chat, so that we can basically integrate here with Loki, with Tempo, with logs on the hub. So this is our plan. And you see here the new multi-cluster observability add-on, which we are currently working on. It will be on the long term replacing our existing add-on for observability. This is the goal. And Roger, do you like to add something here?
I think you summarized it very well. The goal is like to strengthen this single pane of glass and may have an ability for us to send events or signals like the right way, because in the multi-cluster environment now in the platform, if we say that's the ACM, it's only metrics and alerts. So if we want to send other signals, that's why we leverage this, what we call multi-cluster observability add-on through the add-on framework. So I think I encourage people to look at the proposal, and I think it's quite good. And I think we are on the right track here. And very early, so changes will come. But
And just to be clear, this also works across non-OpenShift Kubernetes, right?
It's a good question. Yes, it is certainly the plan, but it will also work on non-OpenShift clusters like it does at the moment. Now, at the moment, you can also monitor non-OpenShift clusters. It will maybe take a little bit longer we will do OpenShift clusters first, and then in a second step we will think about the deployment. The deployment might be a little bit more complex for non-OpenShift clusters. This is something we are discussing at the moment, but yes, for sure, we must also provide this solution for non-OpenShift clusters. Especially, as you have seen at the beginning, we are expanding our support for CNCF compliant non-OpenShift clusters. So this gets a little bit more important for us. So we must also consider this.
Yeah, I know I'll say we, maybe outside of the ACM and ACS teams, don't do a great job of reminding folks that both ACM, Advanced Cluster Manager for Kubernetes, and ACS, Advanced Cluster Security for Kubernetes, work with Kubernetes other than OpenShift, Quay as well, or Key, depending on your English. It can be used as a registry for any cluster. It doesn't matter if it's OpenShift or not. So, and I don't think ACS has a cloud service. So if you don't want to run, Jonny, you had Sean on, right? Even if you don't want to deploy it and run it inside of your own cluster, you can hook into the cloud service and plug in, whatever your Kubernetes is Kubernetes.
Yeah, Kubernetes. I like that one. Kubers. Christian, like you mentioned GitOps, right? Like I'm assuming that all of this development and stuff like that you're doing, right? Like the ultimate goal is to be able to deploy this configuration and configurations via GitOps, right? Like it's not going to be like I guess ultimately what I'm asking is are all of these enhancements going to be GitOps friendly, right? Where once we get to that point down the road, right, where I can deploy this add-on, or I can deploy like a change to the add-on via GitOps if I wanted to. So maybe I'm expanding, maybe I'm deploying factory clusters all the time, right? And I want to make subtle changes and stuff like that across that fleet.
I mean, it must be GitOps ready in the future. I mean, what is really the most important question from the customers is, if you see all these new features, they must be configurable. No? You must be able to say, I want metrics, but I want their logging, I want tracing. No? So all the subcomponents need to be enabled or disabled. And there might be customers who like to configure this with GitOps, and then it should also be configurable from GitOps to enable, disable the settings, or maybe to tune the different settings. No? So yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, so what you see here at the moment is our ACM UI, and I really just quickly wanted to go over some topics, what we already discussed. So in the new ACM 2.11 version, we have now the update risk predictions. This is a very interesting feature, I think. Basically, we are collaborating with the Insights team. And last week, a customer was basically asking me, you don't see here any update risks. And when I checked with our engineering how you can basically reproduce this, and what we have done is we have just shut down a master of one of the managed clusters. And then after a while, you have seen the update risks. So we are getting lots of questions regarding how can ACM help us to improve the upgrade process, to make the upgrade more stable. So there are different things to consider, but this is really a good enhancement here. Then you see here also our alerts, and this is at the moment pointing to the OpenShift Observability dashboard. And in the future, as I have mentioned, we will work on integrating this more natively in the UI. What you see also here on the bottom is some searches. So you can save your searches, you can save your custom searches, and you get them here in the fleet view. So for example, here I'm just starting a search where I want to see all the pods which are not running in the whole fleet. So this is something for sure very interesting for the customer. So here you see again our search UI, and here you see that we are now better displaying the virtual machines, and you can certainly also apply some actions regarding the virtual machine, as we have just discussed. So think about, and we are very interested in any kind of feedback about, can we delete? Can we restart virtual machines? What kind of actions would make sense? No? So this is something as what we are currently discussing. No? So this is the search view. Let us very quickly, and I know that our time is a little bit limited, going into our ACM clusters overview. So our dashboards, which you likely already know. No? So you see the standard dashboards, what we have. You see here that the Boston cluster might have some etcd problems. You remember that in the past, this was always a customer question about, hey, my etcd is not stable. How can I really see this? And in the past, it cost a lot of troubleshooting steps, and now you just drill down into the cluster, and it really gives you already a good overview about what might cause this etcd bottleneck here. Now, so this is already, I think, very clear, but let me show you something else quickly. And this is basically our custom dashboard. So we are really getting a lot of questions about, can I create my own dashboard? And we are working a lot with different teams also at OpenShift to provide new dashboards into ACM. As an example, we are working on a gatekeeper dashboard, so the admission controller. We are working on Tecton, getting Tecton dashboards, GitOps operator dashboards, so to monitor the Argo CD instance. We have done the work with hosted control planes, and I mentioned that we have done the work with OpenShift virtualization. And here you basically see some dashboard which one of my colleagues is currently working on. So we are working on improving these dashboards, and we really could get any help we can get here in order to further improve this. As I mentioned before, we are working also on the capacity management improvements. And what you see here quickly as a last thing I wanted to show, because we don't have so much time, but I wanted to show you also our right sizing dashboard. So this is the very important new feature what many customers are asking for. So basically they are looking, they want to get an overview about if the namespaces are configured correctly, what is the recommended setting of the namespaces. And the important thing and the difference to the vertical port autoscaler, what other customers are using. So we know this, we have asked a lot of customers about how they are doing their right sizing. Now, the most important thing is that we can memorize the behavior of the application. So we can store the behavior for the last 30 days. This means if an application had some spikes, it was an unexpected behavior of the application, when we can remember this and we can better consider this for our calculation. So I hope this was interesting. I know I was a little bit fast, but let me know if you have any questions regarding what I shown to you, or any other questions maybe regarding the architecture, where you wanted to have some deep dive questions. Let me know.
I'll ask you to expand a little bit on the cluster capacity management, because I see those questions come up pretty frequently, and usually it's in the context of, how many more widgets can I deploy into my cluster? And well, there are some OpenShift single cluster level tools. I think ACM does a good job of this, so I kind of want to highlight that.
Maybe I start with capacity management dashboards, what we have done for hosted control planes. So we have basically provided some dashboard where you can basically see how many resources can I create in hosted control plane. So I'm currently here in my developer instance. This is where I'm getting an overview. But basically what the customers can get from the hosted control planes is that they can see how many can I really create, how many do I have. So it gives you a nice overview about the capacity management of hosted control planes. If you want to take a look into our standard dashboards, and this is something we can do right now. So is the question regarding the dashboards what you see here? Is it regarding the optimization of the clusters regarding CPU and memory? Is your question regarding this dashboards?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
I kind of wanted, I was in a roundabout way kind of asking just for a feature tour of this, or an explanation of this, because I think it's it's a hidden gem, if you will. It's something I'm not sure a lot of people know about.
Yeah, I mean, what you see here is basically the list of clusters. So you see that this is also, for example, not an OpenShift cluster. And you see here basically if the clusters are maybe configured in a way that it's too much resource consumption, much more than it should be. So this means you can drill down into the cluster And you can go here also on the namespace level. And you can see basically which namespace is causing you most of the CPU requests. And then you can drill down in this namespace, and you can drill down even on the container level, and you can analyze this. I mean, this is really not a trivial task. So it's really a task, in my opinion, for an analyst who needs to know quite well about your environment. You need to also maybe start some discussions with your developer, because there might be applications, as I have mentioned before, who are not working normally. So you might see some over commitment for this application, but then on the other hand, this application has some spikes, and this might justify that the application has the settings which it has just right now. So I would say it's not a deterministic way to see the data, but it's starting discussion processes between you as a cluster administrator and your developer. Or
And I should probably already know this. Is there any ability within the ACM dashboards to do, I'm going to use the term predictive analysis? So, can I look and approximately figure out that, when I deploy 6 more instances of this application, or in 4 months' time, I'm going to need to scale out my cluster to accommodate the capacity needs. And I feel like those questions are always, they're hard. They're difficult. They're challenging, because at any point in time, you could have a new user come in and say, I need, X amount of resources. And suddenly all of those predictions are meaningless.
This is a very good question. So there are 2 answers for this regarding predictive analysis. So you know that we are working with the analytics team of OpenShift monitoring. And in the future, we will quite for sure get some features here which will help us with predictive analysis. So we have some Jira's open. As you know, we have some customers waiting for this, but it's not coming concrete. But on the other hand, in ACM, we have a repository. It's not official part of the product, but it's a Git repository I would be happy to share, where we are doing this kind of capacity management. So basically, we can see, and this was a customer request, how many clusters can I deploy in my fleet? So we have seen that if you have 80 clusters, for example, you are starting to see some smaller bottlenecks. So we could analyze this. We could even improve our stack by analyzing with this tool. So this is the first thing. And the second thing is the bottleneck detection tool, what we have in order to see basically if you have an existing cluster, which component is really causing the problem. So let me share this repository in the chat, and I hope that this answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's helpful. And again, I think it's something that is sometimes overlooked, because we spend a lot of time, at least I do when I'm in conversations around ACM, we spend a lot of time talking about, policies and being able to do, enforcement of configuration and reporting and all that other type of stuff. And we sort of, I don't want to say we hand wave over the analytics part, but it usually gets less focus. And so I always want to try and highlight it when I can, because I think it's really cool.
Yeah. So if you have any customers who are asking for this, we can share afterwards the enhancement request, and we can add the customer case, and maybe it can be prioritized a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, anybody who's watching us either live or not live, feel free to reach out to Jonny or I, and we're happy to make that connection. I've always tell folks inside of Red Hat because both Christian and Roger are product managers, it's very easy to influence product direction. You basically associate customers with it. If you can associate customers, because customers, of course, equate to revenue, to money coming in. If customers want a feature, want a capability, then the more interest, the more demand we can show for that, then the easier it is for them to bump up that priority and make it happen faster. So if there's things you're interested in, let your account team know. Tell them, and we'll connect it all back. There's multiple methods that they can do that inside of Red Hat. So. With that, I know we are just across the top of the hour. So in the last few minutes here, if anybody has any questions, I think we've answered all the questions that have come up, Jonny. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop those into chat. We'll address those as they come up here in the last couple minutes. Again, if you're not watching us live, feel free to reach out via email or on Slack, Jonny, Jonny at redhat.com, or Sully, Sully at redhat.com. And we're very happy to make those connections and get those questions answered. Like Jonny said earlier, sometimes we get some really interesting questions that are not necessarily directly related to OpenShift, and that's okay. We try our best to help out folks. So who was it that was asking before? Where did it go? Numplex. Yeah. Like, not necessarily related to OpenShift, but Jonny knows people, and Jonny knows a lot of people who can help us with all of those things. So very, very happy to make connections as needed.
Yeah. So I just put the link. And maybe you would like to share with the audience regarding what I talked to regarding our capacity planning a repository, which is it's really worth looking into this. I can promise you. And it was a lot of work, but it's, as I mentioned, not official, but we can talk about this.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Jonny already posted it into the chat there.
Yep, I did. Yep.
All right. So with that being said, thank you, gentlemen, very much for your time today. This has been really informational, and I'm always, I said at the very beginning, right? Multicluster is something that is almost ubiquitous, within customer environments today, and it's only becoming more pervasive as we see more and more, OpenShift out there. My world is focused around OpenShift virtualization, which is, bare metal OpenShift focused. And I love seeing all the things that are happening there around the metrics and the aggregation of things, configuration and all of that. So it's just exciting to me. I love seeing all this stuff come to fruition. And I sometimes forget because, I sit on the product team. So I see our roadmaps and I see all the stuff that's going out and I see all the Jira issues, and I lose track of when things actually get shipped versus when they're, just a Jira issue versus, dev preview, tech preview. So I love seeing all these things. And thank you so much for taking the time today. With that, Jonny, I will let you have last words while I dig through our interface here.
All right, awesome. Yeah, Christian, Roger, thank you. I know it's late where you're at, so thank you for. I know, Christian, you said it's not too late, but it's beer time in most places. So thank you for taking the time to come out here and talk about this stuff. It's awesome to see how far ACM has come, and to see we're not done, right? We're still going. There's a lot of evolving to do and stuff like that, and I think that's probably my favorite word right now when we talk about the OpenShift. As Andrew says, the OpenShift fractal, right? Everything's evolving. Some things are, we've learned a lot from it, so they're expiring, and we've come up with a new way of doing it. So it's really awesome to see all this technology coming forward. The dashboard looks awesome. It's cool to see ACM as that central pane of glass, and really taking over as that pane of glass for all of your cluster and fleet management. I think that's ridiculously awesome. So looking forward to seeing where it goes, 6 months from now.
Thank you.
All right, Joe. We'll see you next week.
See you.